So guys, thank you for joining us again for another Australian Football Services podcast. I'm Anel as always, and today we are absolutely blessed to have George Donikian joining us. Vastly experienced in the world of broadcasting, particularly having worked with SBS, Channel 9 and Channel 10. So we are very, very pleased to have him on our podcast today. And George, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Anel. I'm just wondering, were you born in Australia?
No, born overseas, born in Bosnia originally.
Okay. What year did you arrive in Australia?
96.
96. What year were you born?
89.
89. Okay. We launched SBS in 1980.
There you go. Wonderful.
It was a very, very different Australia. And yep. I make the point especially because if we're going to talk about the game, if we're going to talk about the changes, if we're going to talk about all the sorts of things that we've had to control and absorb and take on board, we've got to understand that when I began my journey, my television journey, and my radio journey was even earlier, it was a very different Australia. I couldn't be George Donikian in 1975. They didn't accept ethnics. Mm-hmm. I was told to change my name.
Wow.
Think about that. Yeah. In television parlance, we launched SBS. It was a brand new multicultural television service like none in the world. Channel 4 came afterwards. In fact, Channel 4 in Britain sent a team to Australia to have a look at this newfangled multicultural television, which began life as Channel O and 28. And then, of course, morphed into what you know today as SBS. But it was a very different Australia, very different television market. And as you know, no internet, no social media. So television was the be-all and end-all. So if you worked on Australian television, everybody knew who you were. If they didn't, they certainly weren't Australian.
Absolutely. George, that was a great start. So for those that might not be familiar with yourself, could you give us a little bit of a background, a bit of a history in your career, particularly in football and also in broadcasting?
Sure. Well, I had the enormous good fortune as a young boy to fall in love with football, the round ball code, the world game. And I had a passion, and I have a tremendous talented brother called Stephen, who has a couple of grandkids, and his son didn't play too badly. And they could be the Donikians that actually make it in football. We nearly did. Injuries put paid to our sporting aspirations. But I had the good fortune to be coached by three of the biggest and brightest talents that this country has ever had. Joe Venglosh, who was in Australia learning English and also teaching school children about physical education. He happened to be at my school, and he was one of the great mentors. Joe Marston, the great Australian who played first division football when nobody knew what a skippy was. And the other one was Uncle Joe Vlasic. So I had the Joes, Joe Marston, Uncle Joe Vlasic, and Joe Venglosh as my three coaches. And I ended up playing, schoolboys, state football. I also played state cricket, but state football. And of course, I began my life club football with a team called Panhellenic, which no longer exists, but it morphed into a thing called Sydney Olympic. And of all the nights, tonight, Sydney Olympic is back in the headlines on the 10 telecast as part of the FFA Cup, taking on Sydney FC. So they're not just taking on anybody. So one of the grand old clubs of the past taking on one of the giants of the current football world. So it should be a battle of David and Goliath.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So from there, of course, my football aspirations were put on hold after injury, ended them. I then got into radio, and then from radio to television. I launched SBS. For the first decade, I was the original news anchor, which was a tremendous opportunity. They didn't give ethnic boys and girls a chance to work on television, but I got one. I got one chance. So that was fantastic time. From there, I went to the biggest network in Australia, the Nine Network, where I worked with just about anyone and everyone who's worked in this television industry at a time, of course, when we could go from one place to the other with a helicopter because it was very normal. It was super indulgent, but very normal for us at Channel 9. And it was a fantastic time to be in TV and to be probably one of the most amazing television platforms that only wanted to do one thing, be the best. That's something I've always wanted to do and be part of. And from there, after leaving Nine, because of, again, a number of things that got in the way, one of them was contractual obligations that changed, and I wasn't prepared to, take a second position. I only had the one role, which was the one I wanted from day one. But life sometimes plays you some interesting tricks, and you do what you can. And from there, I left and went to the 10 network, where I spent the next 21, 22 years working before I pulled the pin nearly 2012 to set up my own company called Donikian Media. And I do all sorts of things, a lot of corporate training, a lot of feature work. For example, we got an opportunity to travel the world and do a documentary on Armenia, which is part of my heritage. I'm part Armenian, part Greek, or all Australian, but for heritage that is Athenian, and also from a part of the world that no longer exists. And I know there's a modern Armenia, but where my forebears came from was the great kingdom of Armenia, which of course today is part of Turkey. So a real mix, like you, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, that's a fantastic story. And having read quite a few books myself about the early days of football, in particular in Australia, it's come a long way from where we started. Yeah, it's been a massive battle, and that's probably an understatement, considering you've had a lot of pioneers who were really, really struggling to push the game forward and just carve a little niche for itself in the market with which it found itself. So I think people like yourself have absolutely done a great job to push it forward.
And it works like this. The business in this country, especially when television was the big business, and radio for that matter too, and the newspapers, when they were so powerful, we were almost monopolized out of the game. Rugby league in New South Wales and in Queensland, Australian rules, or the VFA or the VFL as it was then, and the SANFL and the Waffle in WA, they seemed to curry favour because it was, they told a better story. They were better administrators than we were. And people don't readily understand that during the Great War, that is the First World War, so many football clubs, these soccer clubs, gave up their players so they could go overseas and fight for Australia, and they never came back. And those numbers were such that the game was almost decimated after the war. And the codes that did grow, not artificially, but organically, were the Australian rules and the rugby leagues of the world, and the rugby union, which was primarily directed at all the private schools. So if you had a private school boy, they definitely played rugby union, especially in Sydney and in Brisbane. And if you look very carefully, that's where most of our test stars that play for the Wallabies come from. There's the occasional Victorian, maybe. There's a couple of WA boys and a lot of people from Canberra, because private schools and universities. But essentially, football took a while to recover. Then, of course, World War II came. And again, the game was always seemed to be second or third off the mark. And yet, the first national league in Australia belongs to football, to the round ball code. We were the NSL, the first, back in 1977. And it scared the AFL so much that they started, pushing clubs out the door that couldn't, make a quid, make a dollar.
Yeah.
And they started merging clubs and created from that shell that was the VFL or the VFA and the SANFL and the WFL. They created this thing called the AFL, the Australian Football League.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's been backed by television, it's been backed by radio, and been backed by the newspapers.
Yep.
Something that couldn't be said for the World Game here.
Yep.
Things are about to change. The 10 network is throwing as much energy and talent and technique and cameras to do something that the game hasn't really had ever before, and that is someone who believes in it, someone who has skin in the game. And you know how the conversation changes when you have skin in the game. Yep. Whether it's your family, whether it's your business, whether it's your group of friends. If you have skin in the game, everything changes. Yep. And right now, this is a seriously exciting time. I can say this because I have that length of history to say that we've never been in a better position. But again, all those things that have held us back, and that is a combination of what I told you earlier, plus the game has always been held by the stakeholders and they've been run by the states. Does that sound familiar? It's a bit like COVID Australia. The federal government has been weakened because all the states call the shots. That's not what federation, you know, when they set up federation in the early 1900s, this is not what was supposed to be the model. The model was, if you have problems, the federal government comes in and says, we'll look after things.
Yep.
The reality is very different. And football has had this ego problem. Does that sound familiar?
100%.
New South Wales taking on Victoria. Mm-hmm. Victoria taking on South Australia. And Queensland and WA and Canberra. Anybody else got in the way? In fact, we have muddled up this game so often in the past. It's been unbelievable. And in the 60s, one president of the Australian Soccer Federation at the time, Jim Bayuti, who was a president of APIA a long, long time ago, he was told by FIFA at the time, you need to pay some transfer fees to these Austrian clubs. And we're talking about the 56, 57, 58 period when because of Europe and the war, well, not so much the war, but the problems in Hungary and the problems in the Balkans, we saw massive challenges and people started leaving. Mm-hmm. And amongst those people who came to Australia were great footballers. Yep. Leo Baumgartner and people of that caliber, Shagi, Fusash, and all these people. Now, they played for European clubs. When they came here, the clubs said, hey, pay us. The Australians went, we're over here. No one cares. No one knows. We don't have telecast TV. There was no satellite television in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yep.
They don't know what we're doing down here. Why should we pay them a cent? So we had this bullshit moment, and FIFA said, Australia, who do you think you are? And they banned Australia from football.
Yeah,
think about that. So for a long, long time, we were on the outer. And then while that's happening, rugby league, rugby union, and the AFL continues to grow. And that's why we have been a step behind, 2 steps behind, and a few dollars short of being able to make a difference. And the relationships that we've lost in all those years were taken up by the rugby league, the AFL, and the rugby union. If you wanted a ground from the council and you were a rugby league club or an AFL club, you got first chance.
Yep.
You got the best ground. We would get the rocky ground with an angle like this, and occasionally they cut the lawn. Yeah. So I remember at Vaucluse, when I was growing up in Sydney, playing a game against Vaucluse High. We're playing on a ground like this, flint hard, no grass on it. It should have been grass if council bothered to do something about it, but they didn't care. So very difficult times. So there have been a lot of reasons this is a tremendous time. You've come along and you're working in this sphere of influence. It's a tremendous opportunity to tell some great stories. There are great, great, great families that have come from all over the world to settle in Australia and make this their home. Well, you put all that talent in a melting pot and you give it an opportunity to showcase its talents, and whether they're Brazilian, whether they're Bosnian, whether they're, Italian, whether they're British, whether they're Swedish, they're all here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cristiano Ronaldo has family in Victoria. So Batistuta was in WA. So, Cassio, great Brazilian, his son has just made his debut for Adelaide United. How exciting is that?
Absolutely.
So we're on the cusp of some seriously exciting stuff. There is some prodigious talent coming through. We've always had, wonderfully talented footballers. Some have been fired up and really committed and had a real hunger, and they left. They went overseas at a time when you didn't travel readily overseas. You didn't have satellite phones. You didn't have mobile phones. You didn't have internet to feel at home. So they went over there at really tough times. I know Craig Johnston's story very well, and Craig will tell you there were many times he wanted to come back because he felt like a failure, but he was more afraid of coming back here as a failure. So he stuck it out there, and he made it to Liverpool, and on it, the story goes on. But one of the great football stars of 1966, Jack Charlton, who was the coach at Middlesbrough, and saw him as a youngster, said, "Listen, kid, you're a good kid. You got a good heart. Forget about playing football." Yeah, but he wouldn't forget it, and he ended up doing okay, didn't he?
Absolutely, 100%.
So it's about attitude. It's about focus. It's about passion. In any field of endeavor, if it's radio, television, you want to be a newspaper person, boy or girl, if you don't have those ingredients, forget it. Do something else,
Yeah, absolutely.
Learn to swim backwards. I don't care. But don't try and tell me that you're going to achieve and succeed if you haven't got those gifts. And those gifts are desire, a really good work ethic, because you can't do things half-heartedly. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur boy. Why? Because when I was growing up, they were the biggest British club in the world. And the only footage we had was what the ABC allowed us to watch at 3 or 4 in the morning when they telecast, unbelievably, the first satellites from Britain for the FA Cup.
Wow.
Imagine. And which team was almost every other year? It was Tottenham. And we didn't get the coverage that we have today. I mean, today you have Optus, you have Stan, you have B in Sport. Who don't you have? You can see any and every league in the world right now. That's why I say the game right now is in the hands of your generation and those beneath you. They're the ones that are going to say to all those monopolies that were holding them back, we don't need you. You're not going to hurt us or hinder us. We want the game, and we're going to move the world to make it happen. So I'm excited by what awaits. Paramount Plus, CBS Viacom, Channel 10. That's a big family connection. That's a big deal. All the naysayers. See, we've got to stop all those people in the background. They call the whispering chorus, who for years were either had a chip on their shoulder because they weren't allowed to play. And I understand their pain, but it doesn't help the game go forward. So there's got to come a time. We've got to have visionaries in the game. We've got to have administrators in the game who can say to everybody, okay, we've made mistakes in the past, but if you want to go forward, let's do it together. And we can do it in a fashion that's going to knock people over. We've got a World Cup, a Women's World Cup, inside 2 years. Thomas Gustafsson, the coach of the Matildas, is challenging not, the 50th rated team in the world to come here.
Yeah.
The number one team. We had the Brazilians here, and that television coverage was fantastic. I remember years ago saying, I don't want to watch women's football. I wanted to watch. I couldn't take my eyes off the Matildas playing Brazil. Now, I'm not going to be able to take my eyes off Australia, America. And people say to me, oh, yeah, we're going to get flogged. Doesn't matter. It's what the women and the girls learn in 2 years' time. They learn now to put it in place and get us ready. I'd be happy to lose 10, 15 games as long as we were learning from every encounter and building a base of young talent that when the time comes and we play the opening game in New Zealand, people will be going, I'm nervous. Not fearful, but nervous with, excitement, because there's nothing more wonderful. People say to me, nerves, oh, they're terrible things. No, 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 no. If you've ever been in front of a stage and there are 100,000 people, or you've been at the MCG or the Sydney Cricket Ground and they're roaring your name, you feel 7 foot tall, okay? That's adrenaline pouring through your veins saying, get ready. Yeah, it's like those moments when the Greeks were about to face the Persians at Thermopylae, and they looked out and there were about 1 million Persians and there were about 300 of them, and they're going, oh shit. No, no, no. Focus, do what you can, and you'll be surprised. So there are exciting times, and we have some friends now, and you've got some big businesses like CommBank and others. You know, Isuzu saw the success of Hyundai. Look, I can tell you, when we started the telecasts in Australia, and it was the Hyundai A-League, people were saying, the Hyundai? No, I said Hyundai. They couldn't even pronounce the name. They didn't like the cars. Today, everyone wants a Hyundai. Everyone knows what it is. And now it's the Isuzu. And who owns Isuzu? Well, only Mitsubishi Corporation, one of the biggest companies in the world. So stand by. We haven't got lightweights. We've got one of the biggest companies in the world selling one of the biggest brands in the world to a whole new audience. Yeah, absolutely. So super time, Anel, super time.
I would 100% agree with you. I think everything you've mentioned there it's really, really exciting to see as a football fan, as a player, and as a coach now myself, to see obviously not just the league, but the young and established players have a springboard to more exposure. It will actually grow their careers as well as the profile of footballers and coaches in Australia. I mean, you mentioned it, for years we've had all of this talent in one pot, and it's just been a matter of trying to find the right ingredients to bake that cake, that footballing cake that we can present to the world and say, hey, look, this is the Aussie style, this is the Aussie team. And obviously those who came before us, they struggled through countless,
for the wrong reasons. They struggled because New South Wales wouldn't agree with Victoria wouldn't agree with WA. We've now reached a stage where it's on people like you and all like you across Australia to say, you know what, let's hold hands, let's lock arms, and together put what we had aside and go forward. Now, there's a young boy called Marco Tilio, Sydney boy, right? Playing for Sydney FC. They looked at him, they loved him, but they didn't have a spot for him. Melbourne City went, come here. You saw what he did. He ended up at the Olympics and he ended up playing for the Socceroos. Now, that's what opportunity. Now, you're a coach. This is what opportunity does. There's nothing more exciting as a coach to anoint a player and say to them, I've got a job for you. You want to do it? And if you watch the eyes go, woo, and you watch the heart and the talent match it, there's nothing more exciting. I talked to you about my 3 coaches. Josef Venglosh, who left Australia and went back to Europe, took Czechoslovakia to the European Championship. They won it, the first one in 75, 76. So think about it. We're not talking about people who didn't have talent. We're talking about people who had a passion and a desire to spread the gospel of football around the world. He came to learn English, and he discovered a whole bunch of kangaroos that can kick the football.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have it, in our DNA yet, but there are kids, boys and girls, who are the generations that will follow Samantha Kerr, Caitlin Ford, Lydia Williams, you see. There are people who are following Viduka. There are the kids that are following now, you name it, all the guys that are playing for the Socceroos. The only thing we need to be is truthful. If the Socceroos don't play well, we say, okay, they didn't have a great game today, but we're going to back them. We're going to support them, because only together and with the full support of the country and the full support of everybody that matters in this game can we go forward. There are countries, let's not forget, Italy missed the last, World Cup. And did I hear it? France missed the World Cup a number of years ago. We're talking about countries that have won multiple World Cups. So why should we feel ashamed if we're having a difficult journey? Oh my God, are you serious? I mean, I believe Uruguay may miss out this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
The first World Cup in Uruguay, 1930, and they could miss out. The world is learning football. TV, radio, Zoom, all of this is spreading the message. Once upon a time, if you didn't have the money, if you didn't have the investment, if you didn't have the coaching, you couldn't progress.
Yep.
Today, it's like, how do I explain it to you? The best way I can explain it to you, if I want to show you something, you send me a WAV file.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? You as a coach, you've got a routine you want me to work on.
Yep.
You as a coach, you've designed it, you've sent it to me. George, follow this, and I want you to record your segments and send them back to me so I can review it. Now, that's called opportunity and technology coming together and offering me a window and offering you a portal to spread your message.
Yep.
Now, when did we have that before?
That's right. That's
You
right.
got it?
Yep.
So to all the naysayers, oh, we've been here before. Well, this is the end of an era, beginning a new era. No. We've had some half starts. We've had some good fortune. Fox came on board at a time when it was important, but it was more important for Fox than it was for the game. You see, Fox wanted to sell subscriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They were launching a subscription channel. What does Murdoch know pretty well? He actually knows B Sky B, because some of the grand money that he's made over his time is out of the world game, not out of rugby league or AFL and all of that. So he said, we'll have the Premier League rights, until he didn't have the Premier League rights. And Optus spent a shitload of money to beat them, right? And they've just released the new contract details, and they've spent even more money to get the further 6 years of the Premier League. Why? Because it's proof, if you want a more magnetic product than the world game, the Premier League, show me, because that's it. That's the goal. Right now, everyone wants to watch their club. And which is your international EPL club, Anel? Which team do you support deep down?
You are going to love this. The team that I have supported ever since I was a boy is actually not in the EPL. They're not even in the Championship. They're in the League One. So I'm a Sheffield Wednesday tragic.
When I was growing up, Sheffield Wednesday was in the First Division.
Yep.
And they had some wonderful players, wonderful players. It's a great shame, right? but it goes to show you how spoilt fans can be.
Oh, yes.
Imagine they're in the Premier League. Their club is, either hasn't won it and they're bitching and moaning. They forget that there are 5-6 leagues below them. And if you don't care enough about your club, if you don't care enough about your supporter base, anything can happen. Chelsea in its day has gone and been relegated. A bunch of clubs have been on that journey. Newcastle are about to be reawakened. Yeah, there's a big deal that's just gone through.
Yeah.
Now, it's a really complicated battle right now because they've got a new coach, a young coach. They're at the bottom of the EPL. They got fabulously rich owners, but the transfer windows don't come fast enough.
Yeah.
All right. And because of the wealth of the Saudis who've bought Newcastle, the other Premier League clubs have got very angry.
Mm-hmm.
So they've created some artificial barriers. So they're going to have to jump a little bit faster and a little bit more, I think, creatively to make up some of the leeway. But I have great faith that they will do ultimately what Chelsea has done, what Arsenal has done in a slightly different way, because they were astute. The Arsenal of 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when they went and selected a guy called Arsene Wenger. You're not old enough to know this, but when Arsene Wenger was introduced, he got the same reception, almost the same reception as what Ange Postecoglou got at Celtic. Yep. Remember the few weeks before Ange was actually anointed, when the word got out that there's an Australian who's in the J League. His name is Postecoglou. Who is thinking about picking him up as the coach of Celtic? They would be mad.
Yeah.
Well, as we've seen, a little mad can be very, very, very good.
And very.
What's he done? What's he done?
Well, he's done great things so far. Took him a while, but
he hasn't taken a while. He's been amazing. I'll tell you what Ange has been. He's not been an instant winner because he's had some failures, but we underrate failure too often. You learn more from your failures than you do your victories. Yeah. Why? Because when there's a victory, you forget all the things that nearly didn't happen. Mm-hmm. You follow? You have a win and you forget about the 4 posters that the other team had. You forget about the 2 offsides that that could have been called either way. Yeah. So instead of losing 4-2, you've won 3-0. Yeah. And you're going, oh, well, you go and play the next team the week after. And if you don't address and do a proper review of what you saw, and you believe in, fairy tales, you as a coach would know that that's the most dangerous time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, when's the most dangerous time, coach? After a goal is scored.
Yep.
Immediately after a goal is scored.
Yep.
I was a goalkeeper, right? And I would say to my defenders, all right, we're 1 ahead, or we're 2-1 in front. Okay, let's double down. Let's make sure they don't pass. That's it. Mm-hmm. You've got to be that tough. You've got to have that steel. Now, there's a guy called Tuchel who came into Chelsea last year after one of their favourite sons didn't quite get the job done. And everyone was said, who is Thomas Tuchel? Well, the English are tremendously naive and sometimes blind if there's someone isn't English.
Yep.
Thomas Tuchel is magnificent.
Yep.
Yeah, I hate to say it. He's magnificent. But I can smile a little and breathe a little bit easier because we at Spurs have Antonio Conte.
Yep.
And I know that Antonio, if we give him the support he requires and the game and the club requires, we will get the momentum going forward. And that's all you can ask. And I say to people time and time again, Christmas is a wonderful time, but it's an invention. The spirit of Christmas is something different. The spirit of Christmas is a bit like American Thanksgiving. It's about reflecting on what you've done all throughout the year, who you need to thank, and give them something special to make that little trip to the new year even better. Now, other cultures have a similar way of thanking, yeah? And they call their times different things. It doesn't matter. If you want to get ahead, there's one way to do it. You've got to have a focus, a single focus.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have everyone on board. And then you've got to allow the players to understand. And you've got to include them. And if they understand, and if they have the intellect, and if they have the courage to follow you, anything is possible.
Absolutely.
You as a coach would be able to recount 10, 12 miracles, it would seem from the outside, where clubs had no chance and they did marvellous things. Leicester. Yeah. What was the magic of Leicester? What was it? They had a pretty good side. They had a pretty good coach. But it was that wonderful time of having enough smart youngsters, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some seasoned veterans, tough big boys at the back,
yep.
A terrific goalkeeper,
yep.
and a canny Italian coach that had seen it all. And they had some luck.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Everyone needs a little bit of luck.
Yeah.
And they did something that all the pundits said couldn't be done. Yeah. Well, they couldn't do it 2 years in a row.
Well,
but let me tell you, what they did was quite remarkable. And what hurt was we should have won it. Spurs, we had that game or two, couple of games that's at that level, the difference between success and failure, Anil, is tissue thin.
Yeah.
Yeah? Think about that. See, you and I, we have beards. We don't use razor blades. Nah. Yeah? Because we know, waste of time.
Yeah.
But truly, if you look at a blade, just as thin it is and it's sharp, that's the difference between success and failure. One day you think you've done everything and you fail. You don't really fail, you just lose that day. Mm-hmm. And this is why today I say to people, show me your focus, show me your belief, and show me that the practices that you are following are based on, reality, not delusion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Basically, following on with what we're talking, what I'm curious about is to get your opinion on currently. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about how state-run federations are running football in each of the different states, particularly on the topic of youth development and also the costs involved with playing NPL. Yep. So in your opinion, as someone that's basically seen the transformation of the world game in Australia, what are the current problems facing our footballing community on a local and, let's say, like a youth development level? Where are the problems lying at the moment?
Let me scare everybody and let me become very unpopular. I want to see every state federation give up their rights to run the game in their state and become part of Football Australia. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might sound like heresy, but the French, who are world champions, have one association. They have 8 centres of excellence, which we could mirror. So imagine, everyone keeps talking about this wonderful centre of excellence that we had in Canberra, and it's now no longer there, and how terrible it is that we've lost it. Okay, fine. Pull down all the state federations, and for each state, replace it with Football Australia, Centre of Excellence, Victoria. Yeah. Football Australia, Centre of Excellence, New South Wales, South Australia, WA, ACT, Northern Territory, Tasmania, and Queensland. Now, working under an umbrella where you have a scheme where everyone is talking to each other, not trying to cut a corner or pinch talent or stockpile talent. Everyone knows what's going on. And what are we doing? We're building the next generation of Socceroos and Matildas.
Yeah.
And that center of excellence should be Matildas and Socceroos same time, to maximize and have it as a medical center there, and buoy the game. Make sure that our medical centers and our centers of excellence all talk to one another. National database. If a coach in Sydney is worried about a player in WA and how he's progressing, you know straight away. You don't have to make 55 phone. All the technology is there. COVID has proven, and in fact has acted as the greatest catalyst for the advancement of technology than ever before. If we didn't have COVID, I'd be saying to you, mate, I want to make a Zoom connection. And you'd be going, George, I'm sorry. What is a Zoom connection? Yeah. You see? So all of a sudden, everyone is an expert on Zoom, okay? Or some other platform, or Skype, whatever. Let's use now the technology. Let's think about the greatest soccer country in the world, the French. Right now, they have a massive advantage. They've got all these wonderful, talented players, and they're pulling them together. No wonder they've got, you know, the quality of players they have. What aren't we doing? We don't have a national scheme pulling together. We all pull. New South Wales pulls, Victoria pulls. I keep hearing, oh, Victoria's the home of the game. I don't care. Victoria doesn't play national football. Yeah. Until it does, I don't care. I'm not Victorian. I'm not New South Wales when I'm talking about the game, right? It's like FNR. I work at FNR. I'm the chair of FNR. For us, I've said to all the broadcasters, we are the game. We support everyone in the game. People say to me, that's pie in the sky. No. It shows you a complete love for the game. We're not blind, nor are we silly and don't see shortcomings, but we won't stab them in the back until they bleed. What we'll do is we'll keep encouraging them to get better. So for me, the greatest challenge is I don't want to see fathers or mothers or mums and dads having to spend 5, 6, 10 grand to make little Johnny or little Maria the next Socceroo or the next Matilda. Now, there will always be parents who want a little bit more, but for everybody, it should be, for us, free. And you should be able to advance the game. And yes, there will always be professionals there, as they have, for example, coaching colleges who say to you, you know, you're good at maths, but we know that you're getting ready for this exam, and we can give you a short intensive course that'll, you know, boost it. Now, if all those specifications and credentials are right and fine, and they fit in with a national scheme, go for it. But outside of that, no. And who do I want to run the game? The national platform that is entrusted with that. If you want to have more regular elections to make sure we have a more representative one, by all means, break down all the barriers as much as possible. Make sure we eliminate as many problem children as we've had in the past. And yes, we've had cliques, as every country has, as every club has, as every family has. You go into you go into a party, and you see people hiving off or branching off. You know, in an Australian barbecue, the women over there, the men over here. What the hell? I remember going to a first party as a young Greek Armenian Australian boy, and I thought to myself, this is crazy. I want to be with the women. I don't want to be here with the men. There's more fun over there. But, you know, I was expected to go over there, get absolutely sloshed with the boys, and then somehow end up talking to a woman at the end of the evening. That's not how it works. No. You know, you've got to use your head. You want a discussion? You want to find out about who you want to go out with? It's preferred and much more preferable that they are capable of carrying on a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
and finding out what makes us tick. And yeah, I've always believed that culturally we have a problem with alcohol in this country. It seems like, you know, we've been so held down, repressed. We need some booze, otherwise we can't talk to anyone. We can't possibly use our hands when we're talking. So you have this, yeah, g'day mate, how are you? That's the great Australian salute. Now, I'm exaggerating, but when I was growing up, it seemed to me you know, that it was crazy.
Yeah.
Now, you came in, what year did you say?
96.
Oh, 1996. Wow, what a great year. So many good things happened in 96. But it's such a recent time.
Yeah.
It's such a recent time, Anil.
Yeah.
I can't begin to tell you how much we've changed and how much more we need to change. But it won't happen overnight. It'll happen. It'll continue to happen.
Absolutely.
And there are always a few setbacks along the way. It's nature. It's society. It's the way it is at the moment. We have everybody at the moment is very angry. They've had 2 years in lockdown, or it's so in Victoria. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
We're the lockdown capital of the world now. We should have a T-shirt. You know, I live in the lockdown capital of the world. How exciting is that? Huh?
Absolutely.
Oh.
George, we're going to touch on last two questions before we let you
go for it.
So you brought up a very good point in terms of, you know, the general consumption of alcohol in Australia, and particularly with the younger people. My question to you would be, as someone that's seen that sort of thing impact heavily on young communities and young footballers, what can young footballers in Australia, typically those in the NPL who are looking to make the step up maybe to the A-League or overseas, what can they do to increase their exposure, obviously in a positive way?
Okay. You've got all the technology today to do a fabulous highlight reel, right? You have more technology available to you today to put a highlight reel together that will rock just about anybody and maybe even win you an Academy Award. So forget about the things that you can't do. What are the other things that you can do? You've got to show a willingness to learn. You've got to show coaches and others that you have a desire. For example, young Marco Tilio, I'll go back to Marco because I know his story a little bit better. I'm a Melbourne City club ambassador, just as I am a former president of South Melbourne, which confuses some people. But you know, when you're on a journey and it's one filled with great moments and great experiences, they're all learning things. And what I learned and what I watch when I see young talent, especially in the lower tiers, I say to all of them, if you really want to make it, don't think about it, make it happen. It's like people said to me for years when I was on television, George, how do I get into TV? And I said to them, do you want to be in TV or you think you want to be in TV? Because they're two different things.
Definitely.
And Anil, what I'm saying is, do you want to succeed or do you think you want to succeed? Because once I sow the seed and you make a commitment, it's not to me, it's to you. Mm-hmm. So for every young boy or young girl who wants to progress and get ahead and play in the biggest stadiums in the world, I only say one thing: put to one side what you'd like and tell me what you want. And once you show that commitment and you open the door, then the rest is work ethic, opportunity, and focus. You as a coach would know you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can lead a player through a training session, but they're not going to fall in love with the game. If they have a love for the game that's unquenchable, if they have a work ethic that's off the charts and they don't think, but they want to win, or they want to succeed, right? Remember the words I'm using? I'm using them with real preciseness here. It's the same discipline to get my head and get my body over the ball before I ram it into the back of the net.
Yeah.
For me, you shouldn't miss a penalty unless you overthink it.
Yeah.
But I'm also very aware, having done an interview with Pele many years ago now, and I said to him, what was the hardest goal of the 1,000 that you scored? He said, as a matter of fact, it was the 1,000th goal. I said, but Pele, it was a penalty. He says, yes, a penalty at the Maracanã, 200,000 people. They all knew I was going to score. Nobody told my legs, which had turned to jelly, that I had to score it. Now think about that. Think, one of the greatest players telling you that for a moment there were seeds of doubt. And that's the reality. That's what happens. You're not beaten by your technique. You're beaten by your mind for a moment being distracted. Now, I say to people time and time again who come to me and they want to learn about broadcasting, they want to be presenters, and I say to them, yeah, I can teach anybody to be a presenter. How well you do, that's entirely incumbent on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can teach you to kick at football, but only you can teach yourself to kick it like Romero or Romario or Ronaldinho or Messi. You follow?
Yeah.
So I can take you almost there, but unless you've got it here, and here, I can look at your father and your mother and go, Anel's a good boy. He loves the game, but he doesn't believe enough.
Yeah.
And you might say to me, "Oh, George, you're looking to find avenues to discourage." No. To be the best requires a level of commitment that very few people have.
That's true.
If we were all meant to be winners, there'd be more of us winning. If there were more of us capable of leading, there'd be more of us leading. The truth of the matter is, we're nearly good enough. We're nearly smart enough. We're nearly. I don't want nearly. In a team, you've got to understand that you've got to have all the ingredients, and you've all got to be singing from the same hymn sheet. As a young boy, I was in a choir. Now, we didn't do the same job in the choir, but if we did our job at the appropriate time, we were mesmeric. We were magnificent.
Yeah.
So that to me is the art of a coach, how to encourage or how to convey to 15, 18, 12, 13 players, boy or girl, that you all have a different job, but we're all playing the same team. And I want you to understand, and this is what Pep Guardiola does. He knows full well the type of game he wants to play. You can't all play it. So he identifies those that he thinks they can, and then puts them and shows them, what it's about. And then he watches. Now, if you look carefully, think very carefully, who's been the shining light at Manchester City at the moment this season?
I mean, I would always argue Kevin De Bruyne.
No, De Bruyne has been injured this year, and he hasn't been able to play 2 games, or put the same effort 2 weeks running. Last year, the year before, outstanding, off the charts, brilliant. I'm talking about the tiny Portuguese player who's basically filling in all the gaps. Aguero has left. Gundogan is not playing at the same position. Sterling has been in and out. But Bernardo, right? Has been running in and scoring goals. And when he scored that goal against Manchester United's De Gea, Their hair was pitiful. No goalkeeper should allow a bouncing ball at that speed on his near post. Not possible.
Yeah, that's true.
Except he was off balance. He was startled by Bernardo coming through, and the ball. Now, that to me shows you that he wasn't in the game.
Yeah.
The keeper was not focused on getting the ball. And he also has as a goalkeeper, in my humble opinion, he has a technical flaw. He loves to stick his foot out. He's not orthodox. He's a great shot stopper.
Yeah.
Great shot stopper. But he flaps at the ball, corners. Allison, who was a brilliant keeper, flapped at two corners 2 weeks ago, and Liverpool lost.
Yeah.
And people were saying, oh, he was pushed. Listen to me. When I was playing the game, we didn't get free kicks.
Yeah.
If we went up and didn't hold the ball, it was open for anybody to kick the hell out of us.
Yeah.
Okay? That was a long time ago. And the rules, I think they've gone too far, like everything else. You think of Pelé, where they're taking him off at the knee. They're breaking his ankle, they're taking him, and the referee's going, play on, play on. Yeah. Today, he jumps over the ball, yellow card. Why? For intent. Oh, so I'm not that I'm complaining, I'm just saying it's a different game. Yeah. So when people say to me, oh, who's the greatest player of all time? Forget it. The silliest, dumbest thing ever. There are great players in every generation. The game has changed. The ball has changed. You as a coach would know that the ball is doing things today it never did.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ball swerves. I mean, I see them now not wanting to catch the ball because it's too hard to catch. I'd like to try. I'm not fit enough to get in there and try, but I still think it's a technical error that they've gone down with this business of making yourself large. And when you're 6'9" or 6'8", I suppose you can. But I wasn't. I was just on 6 foot. But what I did have was I read the play very well, and I was ferociously quick. So if I came off the line, I came off the line. I didn't, should I go? Should I stay? No. I had gone. And my belief always, and Uncle Joe Vlasitz always picked me because he loved it. I would go straight away because my attitude was the striker is going to want one more touch just to make sure he beats me. But I'm going to deny him that extra half second. Mm-hmm. And that's my error. That's my license to beat him. Yep. The fact that I'm giving him less time that he needs. Unless they're brilliant and they've already played the pass as it comes to them, you're going to save it more often than you're going to have the ball scored. But it's amazing how many goalkeepers have lost the plot.
Yeah,
but that's an old goalkeeper talking.
No, that's true. Look, I was a goalkeeper myself.
There you go. There you go. Deny them time.
Absolutely. Close the angles, make it as difficult as they can, and pounce.
But hard.
Yeah.
Scare them.
Yeah.
No, not let them scare you. We knock players over. Don't worry.
Absolutely. You might have actually. Did you have much to do with old Jim Fraser?
Jim Fraser was a brilliant keeper.
Yeah.
And if you look at Jimmy.
Oh, he's still going strong.
Sorry, no. Ask him, why was he built like that? Because you had to be.
Yeah.
Anil, you had to be, because you would take a battering. Let me tell you, in every corner, they'd come and bump you. And I'm talking in his day and my day.
Yeah.
You didn't get any protection from the referee. No. You had to earn it. You had to make it happen. Yeah. You had to impose yourself. There's a word you don't hear today.
No.
A goalkeeper imposing himself. For me, that goal area, that penalty spot, that was mine.
Yeah.
The goal area, that 18 yards, that was my defense team, my centre half, my two backs, and the two halves. If we were playing that way, That was our area. And if I called for it, I didn't want to hear, huh? No, it was my ball.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I left no prisoners.
Yeah.
Yeah. Straight out the door, knock them over.
Absolutely. And so you should have. I mean, look, when I was actually training with Jimmy for a while, he was I was part of
that
his
would have been
academy early
fantastic.
on. It was an incredible experience because I had gone in from playing park soccer, just obviously showing quite a bit of talent, but just not breaking.
Well, he must have seen something in you to take you on board. That's great.
Yeah. He saw something that I didn't see myself when I initially started working with him. And he basically echoed a lot of what you were saying. He was saying, because my apprehension was always, look, I'm not 6 foot, I'm pushing 5'8", but I did have a good vertical leap, well, could read the game and great reflexes. And Jimmy always told me that some of the best goalkeepers he knew were not 6 foot.
Correct.
And they could, exactly. And he could
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
No, let me tell you, Ron Corrie was not a giant keeper. He was a brilliant keeper. There were others like him. We had a guy in my day. Some of the guys that there was one guy called Helmut Rademacher who came and played for Panhellenic 1,000 years ago, and he was the first goalkeeper I remember who wore all black. The only goalkeeper who I'd seen all black. And this is hard to say because television was black and white, so everything was black or white. Yeah, was Lev Yashin, the great Russian who came first in 1956 when Russia made the final of the Olympic Games in Melbourne.
Yep.
Imagine Lev Yashin, the greatest goalkeeper in the world, came here and played for Russia. Now, I saw him as a young boy, 1966 World Cup, and the great Kaiser, the man who would become the Kaiser of German football. You're talking about Beckenbauer. Now, Beckenbauer was a young up-and-comer, and 66 was his coming out party. No one knew anything about Beckenbauer until he introduced the sweeper. Well, he scored a goal against Yashin, which Yashin would not have copped the year earlier or 5 years earlier because he was that brilliant. But one thing about Yashin, he'd come at you and he'd take you out. If you wanted to try and dribble around him, it was a waste of time because he would pounce. They called him the Black Cat because he would come with such pace, right? Yeah. And he'd read the play so well. It takes an extremely talented player to see someone coming at them at 100 miles an hour and be almost finesse, flick the ball over and or try and round them. And Yashin had these long arms, and he outread you. It was like playing poker. He saw you coming, and he would mark the cards up and take you out. Yeah, absolutely. The great Ron Lord was the goalkeeper that I first saw playing for Prague, and I was growing up in Sydney, and I saw him in a night game against FC Basel, the Swiss team rather. They had come to Australia to play in a series of matches, and it was just fantastic. Under lights, sport under lights is magnificent. And I watched this man just stopped the score was 2-2. So it was a tremendous game for Prague and a tremendous game for one of the best teams who arrived in Australia from Europe, Basel. And they were tremendous. But Ron Lord, there was no reason why he wasn't the Australian goalkeeper. He was brilliant. He was tough. He was brave. And he read the angle, just as you said. He was a master of the angles, and he didn't go out and flap. Yeah, he didn't do a De Gea. He didn't do an Allison. And these are great goalkeepers in the modern language. Yeah, and as we said earlier, they're great shot stoppers. Yeah, but I like the full deal. I want the 360-degree goalkeeper who reads the play. Everyone's saying to me now, Spurs are looking at Jordan Pickford. No, please, no. I don't want Jordan Pickford at Spurs.
No, definitely not.
Also is you know, one of these fancy Dans that loves to dive when all you have to do is take 1 yard, one step and take the ball. Yeah.
Very true.
So
Very
you
true.
and me, same page, buddy.
Yeah. Another very good point that that Jimmy always taught me. He said that a goalkeeper diving is a goalkeeper saying that's his last resort. A smart goalkeeper should always be at the right position. I think
the new ball changes that slightly.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because the ball is doing this, it wobbles.
Yeah.
Now I was a wicket keeper, and I can remember as you're going up in the grades. I played for Randwick in Sydney, grade cricket, and I played up to second grade. And I can remember what was a fast bowler in fourth grade, in third grade. In second grade, suddenly the fast bowler also got it to do that. And in first grade, it was like that all the time. You follow? So a little bit more. And when I say that, it was later movement. So it had gone past the bat and gone the other way, which you never saw because they weren't bowling it at that speed, or they didn't have that full motion where they let the ball go at the last moment because they've completed their turn. Mm-hmm. So everything, as you get higher, you get less time on the ball. As a goalkeeper, I got found out when I played at Wentworth Park. It was Apia against Panhellenic, and a guy called Johnny Giacometti, who was a superstar for New South Wales and also for Apia. He had played overseas. He hit this ball, and this is the old football, remember? He hit it with the outside of his boot. Now, this is I'm 15. I'm playing third grade, and he's coming back from injury, and they thought they'd play him for 20, 30 minutes to get him ready for the main game at 3 o'clock. So this is 11 o'clock or midday, right? And he's hit the ball with the outside of his boot, and I went down to my left, and the ball went to the right. Now, no one ever did that again, but that first time was a revelation because I'd grown up. No kid or those teams I was playing in could do that or could hit the ball with that swerve. And imagine that was the old heavy ball. Yeah. Imagine how good he would have. Imagine how dangerous he'd be today, Anel.
Absolutely.
He'd hit the ball and it would go dart.
Beautiful. And George, lastly, can you tell us a little bit about Donikian Media? What do you guys aim to do? What's the goals of the organization?
Look, Donikian Media is a vehicle that allows me to do as many projects as I want to do. For many years, for about 35 of the 36 years, of the 36 years, I was a major news anchor, and it was 40 plus years. I was in contracts that kept telling me what I couldn't do. So Donikian Media is the vehicle that allows me to do whatever I wish to do. Yeah. So if I want to do a feature film, if I want to do a corporate presentation, if I want to host a major event, if I want to train a group of media students, and if it's a business CEO that needs to understand how to cope with the pressures of modern media, then that's the sort of thing that we are doing more and more of. Yeah. Taking businessmen and women and helping them to understand just how incredibly difficult the business is today, mm-hmm. and how to navigate it. You've got to think quite differently to what you did 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago. And the other thing is, to all budding young journalists, as Tim Payne has found out, what you do on social media and other platforms comes back to haunt you. Yeah. So just be aware, right? So you got to be smart. And again, there are coping with, social media today. I didn't have to do it. Our social media was all the letters that appeared in the offices or in the reception areas at all of the television stations. They used to have reams and reams and files of questions or complaints. Well, all those things and have now disappeared and have become part of social media. Yep. So all the things that the receptionists used to keep from us are now dumped on social media.
Yep.
And you have to navigate that as well. So you need to be strong. You need to be comfortable. You don't have to be arrogant. You just have to be, aware of what the challenges are, and be as comfortable in your own skin as you are when you're a goalkeeper in the penalty area.
Yep.
You don't. It's not bluster. If you position yourself well, if you read the game well, then you'll do very well. The same applies in social media and most of anything that you do in modern television today. And the standards, unfortunately, aren't as high, because more and more of the TV that we're seeing today is the streaming services that are produced all around the world.
Yep.
I can remember when the only film festival in Australia was the French Film Festival.
Yes.
Right? That was the only international festival, and it was a little bit of fun. Well, today you have the Italian festival, you have the French festival, you have the Greek festival, you have the Armenian festival, you have the Irish festival. Any nation that's making film can have its own festival. Now, that's unheard of once upon a time, but it's very current and very now. So we live in a multicultural Australia like never before, and that's fantastic. I don't look back and have a chip on my shoulder. I think it's terrific. I think what's really hard is that the technology has come at such a pace. It has taken the guts out of modern television, because modern television can't afford to pay for those old men and women who have been there 20, 30, 40 years to act as a bit of a mentor and say, don't panic, just think this through and you'll get the story up in time. It's amazing what you can do if you don't lose your head. What do we say about goalkeepers? The really good ones have nerves of steel. It's not so much that we have nerves of steel, it's just that we understand what we can do, so we don't worry about what we can't. Yeah. So you have a focus, and you also have probably a resting heart rate that's probably 42.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
See? Which makes you a terrific poker player.
Yep. Yeah.
Not that I'm saying to anyone, go and play poker. All right. Please. Oh, and by the way, I hate betting agencies.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the great challenges today is they're insidious. They're everywhere. And I just wish that we didn't have them, because the world would be a much better place. But it is, so we have to cope with them as well. There you go.
Another challenge to navigate, unfortunately.
Yeah. Have we covered enough of the territory that you wanted, Anel?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I don't want Engine saying to me, you didn't give him a chance to ask you any questions.
No. Look, the beautiful thing of having a chat to you the way we did is we've covered everything we wanted to talk about. So, and it was very organic, very fluid. So thank you so much for your time today. No. Anytime you need anything that you think we can help, I'm very happy to support you. I wish you every success. I believe in the goalkeepers union, so we've got to stick together. 100%. I always have an appreciation for people who are brave, who stand on the last line and don't look for excuses. It's part of what we do. We believe in ourselves, and we're there to hold the rest of them up. Absolutely. All right? Absolutely. Okay. Good on you, my boy. Wish you every success. And to you, and good luck to Tottenham for the rest of the season as well. Bring on Antonio Conte. Listen, you know what? You're a coach. You watch enough of the EPL. Yeah. What have you made of the demise of Dele Alli and some of those players who 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, when they arrived at the club, were world beaters? Is it the fact that they're being scouted now by every defender, so they know now what to expect from Dele, so they close him down first opportunity? And it was a case of people didn't give him any credit when he arrived, so he was allowed to play with a bit more time and a bit more opportunity to do what he wanted. Has he been found out now, is what I'm saying? I think it could very well be that, but I think with players like that who have been at Tottenham for a while and obviously have had such a dramatic impact initially, I think it is partly the scouting network that looks at individual players. I mean, at that level, it's insane that they get down to the nitty-gritty numbers. But I think as well, I dare say, and I say it obviously as a Sheffield Wednesday supporter because I've seen it countless times in my own club. I feel that Delhi might feel like he's outgrown Tottenham. And I feel like his impact, or rather he probably sees that his impact or his role within the club is kind of diminishing. So I don't know whether he's starting to think whether there's greener pastures elsewhere or,
remember what we were talking about at the very beginning? About focus, about drive, about desire, and about passion. If you ever think you've outgrown an organization, it is time to get out. Not to linger. But to think that his form is so good, even England can't pick him. Do you follow? If his form was so outstanding, and yet Tottenham didn't think enough of him, but Gareth Southgate said, mate, you've got a job every time England plays. Where's he been the last couple of years? You see, even at international level, even by people who supposedly are his friends and supporters, they're not playing him. The reality is, like so many things in life, they're results driven. Okay. In television parlance, we had ratings every night. I knew the next morning how I stood and where I stood. Radio was a bit different because you had the ratings season come and go, and at the end of a few months, they would give you the ratings for that term. But television, unique. You knew every night or the next morning what the ratings were last night. So you talk about pressure. That's why I say to you, pressure makes diamonds. You don't worry about things you have no control over. You worry about only the things that will make you better. You do your job, you do it to the best of your ability, and those ratings will go that way. If you're doing the right thing in an organization that trusts you and supports you, you can fly. Okay?
Absolutely.
So go get them, Anel.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.
I'll speak to you again.
All the very best.
Take care.
Bye-bye.